consequences of climate change, it is undeniable that individuals coping with HIV/AIDS have not been exempt from this global crisis. This is particularly true for those residing in regions plagued by flooding or drought, as they have been compelled to relocate to different areas, impeding their ability to consistently adhere to antiretroviral treatments, that is ARVs. Elizabeth Atieno brings us a report on that.
Drought, hunger, migration, floods, houses, schools, and more so hospitals submerged are devastating events that tell a story of the adverse impacts of climate change. The health challenges arising from climate change and the HIV/AIDS pandemic are unprecedented, a situation likely to become worse if the anticipated 50-year drought period comes to fruition. The extreme change in weather patterns brought about by climate change have led to drought and floods, a situation that has left the vulnerable population, including those living with HIV and AIDS, to migrate to safer grounds, which in turn affects their adherence to the ARV drugs. In Don Bosco village, Marsabit County, we meet Kabale Arero, who has been living with HIV for over 18 years. Her area of jurisdiction has been one of the worst hit by drought and hunger. She tells us how the situation has affected her treatment journey. For instance, she is forced to travel all the way to Isiolo County to get the ARV drugs.
Watu 1120 wanaenda Isiolo na zaidi mbele kupata madawa zao, kwa sababu wengi wanaogopa hata visit hapa, na mimi katika hesabu yangu wale watu nimeweza kuokoa ni zaidi ya watu 4,000.
If you're disrupted and you move away from home, so you're not able to access your regular clinic where you pick up your medication, isn't it? Sometimes when there's flooding, the facility is cut off.
Give you some history. Between 2013 and 2022, the number of individuals receiving lifelong antiretroviral treatment has doubled.
Climate change has led to food insecurity or hunger, thereby undermining response to ARV drugs. For example, those living with HIV are at higher risk since AIDS intensifies hunger and malnutrition. Malnutrition and risky infant feeding practices among food insecure mothers also elevates the risk of mother-to-child transmission.
Hii dawa ya ARV inataka chakula. Bila chakula ARV haina maana.
Malnutrition is probably the commonest cause of immunosuppression. If you don't eat enough, your immunity is down. For a person living with HIV, especially who is on treatment, yes, the treatment is great. It improves your immunity build-up, but you also need to pay attention to what you're eating so that you sustain good health.
Pathways linking climate change with HIV and AIDS indicate that human migration impacted by severe drought as witnessed in the country recently leads to human migration, resulting in the enlargement and extension of new sexual networks, which also creates conditions conducive to substance abuse.
When people are displaced, they're living in end up in more crowded environments. It creates a perfect environment for transmission of respiratory disease, and tuberculosis is actually a big deal.
It is with no doubt that the impacts of climate change have greatly impacted the gains made in the fight against HIV and AIDS, which has been in existence since the year 1984. Statistics from NSDCC state that 1.4 million people are currently living with HIV in the country, and 18,473 have since succumbed to the virus. The adolescent and young people aged 15 to 34 account for 75% of all new infections.
Have moved from HIV prevalence. As an indicator on its own is not a good one to look at that response, but we have moved from 6.8% to 3.7%.
Related fatalities have witnessed a substantial decline by 68%. And this, therefore, we now have a number of about 58,446 that we had earlier. It has come down to 18,473 to be specific.
When we talk about the link between climate change and health, there is no way we can shy away from the dire need of resources in terms of funding to cushion nations, especially from the African continent. The finances set aside by international bodies and donors to aid the fight against HIV and AIDS has proven to be a key catalyst fastening the rate of reduction in HIV prevalence in the country. However, there are concerns after the Ministry of Health recently revealed that the country is expected to transition out of most, if not all, donor support by 2030.
In fact, it was by 2027. They will be packing and they will be going away. We requested them to stay until 2030.
Currently, Kenya is utilizing 50 billion Kenya shillings from Global Fund to help fight HIV, malaria and TB.
Msaada ile ninapata kutoka kwa serikali na kutoka county government inategea watu 100 tu.
Has supported many achievements, including more than 110 million tests performed since 2004. VMMC for over 2.5 million men since 2010. We currently care for about a little over 600,000 orphans and vulnerable children. And of course, as mentioned before, 1.3 million people on treatment.
We have boosted the domestic funding for the pool HIV by about 33%. And we are yet to increase this to up to 50%. That is our target.
For now, persons living with HIV and AIDS have been urged to ensure they never run out of ARV stock and also engage in environmental friendly practices like planting of trees to avert effects of climate change. Elizabeth Atino, TV 47.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that. To some business news in the